It was the early 1990s, and Disney had recently purchased the Queen Mary and started conducting ghost tours of ship. At the time, my father was the manager of the hotel portion of the attraction and was a complete skeptic. That didn't stop him from telling us stories at the dinner table about how maids would quit regularly after having entered or cleaned a room and ducking out to get fresh towels and coming back to find the room completely trashed. He found it amusing, at least until the night my sister, my college roommate and I decided to take the ghost tour. He set us up with a tour group with several other tourists, and we followed the guide around as he told us about the history of the vessel, as well as stories and strange things that had taken place on the ship. There were no special effects or peoples in costume. It just wasn't that kind of tour. I remember in the first class poker room, he told us a story about a reappearing blood stain on the floor that was still visible. They would clean it, change the carpet, and do everything they could to try and remove it. But the stain would always return. That creeped me out big time, but the scariest was yet to come. He took us down to the first class swimming pool, where a little girl's spirit is often seen. We were standing on the stairs at one end, with the dressing rooms at the other, and I noticed that my sister and roommate are whispering loudly to each other. They turned and asked me if I had seen the man at the other end of the pool. I had not. They both described him as an older gentleman with a white beard and navy-colored clothing, standing near one of the tiled columns. I looked, but didn't see anyone. They both said he had just disappeared. My sister was very upset, and the tour guide assured her that there was no one in this area of the ship, that it was too restricted. We walked down the stairs to the right-hand side of the pool, down the side, and through the dressing rooms in the back, and exited on the other side where they had seen the man. There was no way for him to get out to the area without passing us. After the tour, we went directly to my father's office. My sister was extremely anxious and freaked out. She told my father the story, and he told her that it was probably a maintenance man, and would make some calls to find out. Never mind the fact that now Disney owned the property, employees were still not allowed to have facial hair. Later that night, my father came home from work, and my sister confronted him straight away about whether it was a maintenance man or not. He told her that yes, there had been a man down there, and she calmed down. Fast forward a few years, and we were talking about other creepy encounters, and my sister starts to joke about the ghost she saw on the Queen Mary. We all start to laugh, and then my father sheepishly states that he had just told her there was a maintenance man to calm her down. Any maintenance would have been scheduled after the tours were done for the day. He had contacted security to make sure no one had snuck down there, and they didn't find a soul. During the summer of 2008 and 9, I was a lifeguard at a locally owned pool. I was known for being really nice, laid back, and would give some leeway for those who liked a small running start to dive in at the deep end, and let people hold others on their shoulders, things like that. Even though I was laid back most of the time, I still had to crack the whip every now and then. A lot of kids would curse loudly, or talk about things that just shouldn't be said in a family environment. I had a lot of friends who went to the pool, most of them being girls, And I remember one day when a friend came up during break and told me that a kid was being really weird and gross, saying disgusting things to her. I told her that if it happened again to let me know. And a few minutes after my break ends, I'm in my chair and find her in the shallow side of the pool with some of our other friends. I then notice a guy a few years older than us. His mid-20s, about 6'2", wading up to her and our friends. He says something I couldn't make out, and sees the girls squirm and makes their faces uncomfortable. This guy starts laughing, and my friend Megan comes swimming over to me, saying he did it again, and I tell her that I saw, and immediately blow my whistle. Now I'm sure you can all remember swimming at a pool and hearing the lifeguard's whistle, and how quiet it gets when everyone turns to look. That's what happened. I looked at him and shouted, "Hey!" And I asked Megan if she knew his name. It was Dylan. So I shout again, "Hey, Dylan! Come here!" I tell Megan to leave as he swims over. By this time the people realized it had nothing to do with them and went back to doing their own thing. When he gets to me, I lean down and tell him I know what he's been doing, saying inappropriate things to my friends, and he needed to stop or he'll be kicked out. He laughs it off, saying it's no big deal and that he was only messing around. I correct him and say it is a big deal and not to do it anymore. He agrees and I let him go. A few hours later, the pool is getting ready to close. I hear a scream and I see Megan with her jaw dropped, swimming away from Dylan very fast, with a look of utter shock on her face. And another friend, Elizabeth, does the same thing. And again, Noelle does it too. All the while, Dylan is laughing his arse off. I tried getting their attention, but without even looking at me or talking, my friends leave the pool and walk to the sound, which is literally a football field away. Dylan is right behind them. I wanted to go after them, but I needed to close the pool. And after doing so in a very fast and sloppy manner, I head over there as quickly as I am able, to find my friends yelling at Dylan to leave them alone. A few other patrons from the pool head over to the sound for some extra swimming, so I know they were watching this all go down. It wasn't a quiet scene. I demanded to know what was going on, and Noelle filled me in. When the pool was getting ready to close up, Dylan went around and started poking his toes and fingers into their butts. It wasn't just them either. He had done it to several girls while there. They just didn't bother to do anything about it. I was pissed, not only because he was doing it to my friends, but because I, as a lifeguard, should have seen what happened and stopped it. I was fuming, screaming at the guy as why he would do such a thing. He's still laughing and telling me to calm down, and I tell him to piss off right before I put his ass to the sand. Keep in mind he's 6'2", and I'm barely 5'8". When I said this, he went from laughing to being quite serious. And he said something along the lines of, "You have no idea what I'd do to you, kid, or what I'd do to those girls if given the chance." Nope, I wasn't having that. He went too far with that one. Still being in my lifeguard attire, I take my whistle off and hand it to Elizabeth, take my flip-flops and kick them to the side, pull my sunglasses off my shirt and set them to Elizabeth. I look him in the eyes while pulling my fist up and say, I wasn't giving him the chance. I start walking towards him, when I finally realize that I wasn't messing around, and he quickly puts his fists up, as I'm almost in rage, and he throws a punch early, missing me by a few inches. I take the opportunity to rush in and throw a quick one too, and hit him at about the chin-nose level, knocking him back a few steps. I shoot in for a takedown. I grab him, pick him up and put him on my right shoulder, and slam him down into the sand, driving my shoulder into his stomach on impact. I hear him wheezing and gasping for air, with a little blood coming from his nose. I stand up and look at him, and I tell him if I ever see him at my pool again, it'll make it worse. By this time there's a small crowd of people, most of which were from the pool, watching, including my friends. I turn to them and tell them to go, and I give them all a ride back to their houses, and told them if I ever see him again, to find the closest adult, to stay near them and keep 911 ready to call. We never saw him again though. Megan told me later that she read in the paper about a guy named Dylan, who was being charged with rape. She didn't recognize the last name, but then again, we never did find out what it was. This happened quite a few years ago. I was probably 12 or 13 at the time, and I was staying at a hotel with my parents, aunt, uncle and cousin, who's a year older than me. One night, our parents decided to go get coffee together at the little cafe in the lobby of this hotel. Now, it's important to know that this was one of those little hotels that was set up over a few buildings, with its hallway set up outside the hotel, a bit like a multi-story motel. You could access the halls by stairs on the corner of each of the buildings. The cafe my parents went to was several buildings away from the one where we were staying, but that wasn't a problem for my cousin and I, seeing as the pool was just downstairs. At about 8 o'clock, we texted our parents on our flip phones, putting on our bathing suits and went downstairs to the pool. Things were fine at first. We swam around and caught up on things that had just happened at school, the boyfriend she'd broken up with and the like. Eventually, we ended up just quietly floating on our backs watching the stars. Without looking over to my cousin, I said something to the effect of, "Wow, nice night, huh?" in a weird voice, hoping to earn a laugh. When I heard a guy's chuckle, I sat up in the water really fast, my face growing red. I hadn't noticed that I had floated away from my cousin and was now next to some guy. He was probably in his early 20s and offered me a friendly glance and an eyebrow raising. Yeah, I guess it is. At 13, I was so cripplingly shy, so I just gave a nervous laugh and hightailed it back over to my cousin, who promptly burst into laughter and began making fun of me, jokingly demanding if he was cute and if he really had laughed at the dumb voice I'd made. I was too embarrassed to find the situation funny, and stayed really close to her, not daring to glance back down to the other end of the pool, where he was now sitting on the edge. My cousin Lizzie just moved on, chatting about random things as we waded in the pool. She got progressively quieter though, eventually playfully splashing me to get my attention. "Your new boyfriend is still watching us," she noted. And even though she was still grinning, her voice didn't sound quite so teasing anymore. I glanced over to where, sure enough, he was still sitting on the edge of the pool, watching us. She splashed me again. "Dude, don't pay him any attention. You may not know much about guys, but I do, and the trick is to just ignore them." She wasn't exactly wrong. I was homeschooled and never spoke to any guys, older than me anyway, and in my eyes she was an expert on worldly wisdom. I watched her face, mimicking her and playfully splashing back. "Maybe we should go get Mum, or your mum or something," I said, as she shook her head. "No, let's just go back to the hotel room. I don't want my mum to freak out." That seemed like a good idea to both of us. Her mum was kind of terrifying when she was mad. "We can text her when she gets up there." I nodded, moving and pushing myself out the pool, grabbing our towels and shoes. She made some joke about what was going on, but I didn't hear it. The guy was standing up too, though he seemed to be pretty casual about getting his own things. When I looked back at her, her expression confirmed she'd seen it, but she just kept putting on her shoes. I followed suit, walking close behind her, when she turned to head towards the stairs. We began walking up them, both of us a little nervous, but trusting it was just coincidence, until we heard footsteps behind us on the stairs. A brief glance down showed the same guy just a flight of stairs below us, meeting my gaze with a little grin. He didn't seem drunk or high, at least not from my sheltered perspective. "Lizzie?" I said quietly, trying to alert her that he was close, and she was moving up the stairs a lot faster now. "I know. Let's go to the wrong floor. We can loop back around and then just go to our rooms. We'll call Mum once we get there," she promised. This seemed more strained, her pretty face screwed up with anxiety. As an avid reader of mystery, it seemed like the best possible choice. So we go off 2 floors early and speed walk down the outdoor hall and around the corner. As soon as we were out of sight, Lizzie grabbed my hand, taking off into a run and nearly jerking me off my feet. Before that moment, I hadn't been legitimately scared, but fear is infectious. I squeezed her hand, keeping up pace as footsteps that weren't ours began echoing on the same floor that we had chosen to loop around on. We whipped around the next corner, and the next, until we breathlessly found the stairs again, and took them 2 at a time. I prompted a high-pitched squeak from Lizzie, who at this point was dragging me along more than anything else. I was scared out of my wits and practically paralyzed, tripping up the stairs and down the hall on our floor. She jammed the key into our room's door and pushed me inside, slamming the door and drawing the blinds as soon as we were inside, bursting into tears as soon as the door was locked. I felt numb. She was crying more from adrenaline than anything, but after she had calmed down, she wasted no time picking up the phone and trying to contact her mother, who didn't pick up. Then my mum, who similarly didn't have her phone on her. At the age of 12, it felt like we had been waiting hours on our bed, hugging each other and shivering as we were still wearing wet bathing suits. We did end up calming down though, offering each other quite rational explanations of what happened. Maybe we had just picked the guy's floor. Maybe he hadn't been following us. When you're scared, it's honestly surprisingly easy to eventually just believe things were all coincidence. Much calmer. We decided to do a really dumb thing. Go out to the car to get Lizzie's activity bag, full of snacks and her Game Boy. It seemed like an alright idea at the time, since we both believed it had just been a coincidence. And since we were both starving, we wrapped up in our towels and she grabbed her mum's key and her cell phone, and we made a plan at the hotel room door. We locked ourselves in the car if this guy were to come back, and call whatever numbers we could think of. If he appeared while we were walking back, we'd go to the lobby and find our parents. It seemed pretty foolproof at the time. Now, just kind of a horror story done. Nothing happened until we got to the parking lot in front of the building, when we hear a voice shout at us from one of the halls. "Hey girls, where the hell do you think you're going, cuties?" I looked back to where the creepy guy was leaning on the railings of our floor. Lizzie gave some sort of unearthly screech and grabbed my hand again, digging me for long before I could get a better look. She yanked open the car door and dove inside as I tumbled after her, locking the car as soon as we were both in. As soon as she had caught her breath, she untangled herself from me and pulled herself into the back of the minivan, back into the furthest row, and motioning for me to follow. I did so, hunkering down with her between the seats. I'd never felt like my own breathing was loud before, but as we lay there in dead silence, it seemed ungodly loud. And then there was tapping. I squeezed my eyes shut, not wanting to know what the hell he was doing outside of the car. But the sound of tapping was unmistakable, like he was just drumming his fingers on the window. Lizzie pulled me tight, not moving, like he wouldn't be able to see us if we just held on still enough. I don't know how long he stayed there for, but we were frozen in terror. I wasn't sure of what was worse, the darkness of keeping my eyes closed, or what it would be to look up, and to see him standing there. And just like that, he stopped. Neither of us moved for another 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and then I started crying, scared to death. Lizzie just holding deathly still, she began pushing me to sit up, hands rough, and I realized what she was doing a moment later when I heard her dialing on the phone, and the sound of each of our parents' voicemail. She didn't call 911. Now, maybe because we're older, we would have, but at 13, 911 was a number reserved for house fires and murders. Not guys in their 20s following little girls to the car. Dumb, right? We eventually ran out of our car and back to the hotel, slamming and locking the door, and falling into a sobbing heap inside. When our parents finally arrived, they complained about not having their cell phones with them, and soothed us, eventually convincing us that though the guy was creepy, we hadn't been in any danger. I think they thought that it was the truth, and honestly, it was all we wanted to believe. Lizzie and I saw him a few more times after that, mostly at night when he sat by the pool, and offered us a shit-eating grin every time we passed. But we were always with our parents until we left the hotel. When he saw us packing our bags and leaving with our parents, he offered us this forlorn little wave that no one but me saw, mouthing something. "See you later, cutie." I didn't tell my parents. It didn't seem worth it. It's not till now I realize how creepy this guy really was. And while he could be just some harmless guy who thought it would be hilarious to follow preteen girls around a hotel, it is certainly the hallmarkings of a pedophile. I'm glad I never did see him again. Let me take you back to the summer of 2009, when I turned 13. Like any unpopular teenager, I decided to have my new friends with me to spend my birthday at the swimming pool about 45 minutes away from the area where I lived. It's a pretty nice pool, with a kids area and some rapids, which are really more of a lazy river type deal. I used to go there all the time, but I haven't been there since, for reasons you'll understand shortly. Anyway, my friends and I have spent a fun-filled couple of hours in the pool. When the time comes to leave and head back to my house and eat cake and ice cream and all that crap that teens eat at birthdays. As you do, we head into the showers and then into the changing rooms. The changing rooms at this pool are those stalls which aren't floor-to-ceiling walls, with gaps at the bottom and top. They're about 1.5 meters by 1.5 meters, and there are benches opposite the door. Now I won't lie, at the age of 13 I was a really slow changer, but in a group of friends who were mostly girls, including myself, there wasn't much difference. So I'm getting changed. I'm standing there in my towel, just about to start putting on my underwear, when I hear something. I probably would have avoided a lot of shit if I'd have just looked up then. But hey, I was getting changed and not concentrating. It's when I finally got my underwear on that I looked up, and unfortunately, locked eyes with a guy who had his head between the wall and the ceiling. Like literally, he has jammed his head over the wall to look at me. A young teenage girl changing. I'm shocked, because what the hell do you do in this situation? He pulls his head back when he realizes I've seen him, and I feel sick. I have chills all up and down my neck as I try and get dressed as fast as I can. My skin crawled. It was absolutely awful. The story doesn't end there though. Fast forward a few minutes of the fastest change of my life, and now I'm fully clothed, with one trainer on and the other in my hand. I have no idea what I'm doing now, but I'm pretty sure he's gonna come back. So I put myself on the bench, crouched in a stance I'm pretty sure any action hero would be proud of. Lo and behold, back comes his face, jammed back into this tiny gap. It must have hurt, but apparently sacrifices have to be made in the pursuit of inappropriate staring. This time though, I'm damn ready. I don't know whether anyone's ever had a hard shoe sole forcibly jammed into their eye, and nose twice in a row, but it looked painful. I hope it was bloody painful at least. That was basically it from him. I put on my shoes and walked calmly out to my friends, and then we met with my parents at the doors. I didn't tell any of them, not even when I passed him out on reception. He didn't see me, but I saw him, and let me tell you, my greatest regret nowadays was that I didn't tell my dad right away and watch him slug the arsehole in the face. I regret it so much you have no idea. It should probably bother me more than it does, and has, but I think the fact that I never told anyone bothers me the most. All it does now is keep me up at night, and make me feel sick at times. A word of warning to all you ladies out there. Never accept this from anyone. No one should ever be able to see you naked without your consent, especially when you're in a vulnerable place like a public changing room. Anyone who does this should definitely be reported, because those are the kind of people we really don't want in a good society. I was recently reminded of this encounter by my mother. If she hadn't have brought it up, I probably would have gone the rest of my life without thinking of this incident. But once I did, then all the memories came flooding back. My family travelled from the Midwest to the East Coast almost every year. We usually drove through Canada to New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, and then up to Maine, where my dad's family is from. We stopped at various tourist spots and resorts while on the trip. When I was around 6 to 7 years old, we were staying at a family-style resort in New Hampshire. It was a very large complex with 4 buildings full of hotel rooms, all facing each other with a parking lot to the left, a small park picnicking area in the middle, and the outdoor pool with a fence around it to the right. Each building had 2 levels with outdoor stairs, and each room had a door that went outside, not into a hallway. There was a path from the bathroom of the stairs through the small park to the pool. I've always been quick to get ready, So while my mom, dad, sister and I were getting ready to go to the pool, I was getting antsy and wanted to go check it out. The tacky water slide tackled onto the side of the pool, and I remember my dad being busy and distracted while I said, "I'm going out to the pool," and began walking outside and down the stairs. You could see the park and pool from our balcony, but Dad wanted me to wait. I did not, and proceeded to walk by myself to the pool. I was walking along the path through the little park when two big arms picked me up and started pulling me back. This is when I have the sharpest memory. It's of my purple jelly sandals being lifted off the ground underneath me. I didn't immediately turn around because I just figured it was my dad, dragging me back to the room, mad that I disobeyed him. I just sighed and accepted my fate of being in trouble. Then I heard my dad in the distance yell, "Hey! Get off my daughter!" Or something with more swear words. So I finally turned to see who the hell was holding me. It was a guy, really tall and really thin, wearing dark colours. He had a car that was pulled up right next to the park, not parked in a parking spot or anything, and only about 20 feet away. I looked and saw my dad barreling down the motel stairs holding my sister's water noodle and wearing his bright green neon water shorts, as this was 96. The dude saw my dad, dropped me, and then dove into the car, which promptly drove off. I cried because I scraped my leg on the floor, and my dad chased the car for a short while, but they quickly picked up speed and were gone. I have no idea if the license plate was recorded, or if the cops were called. We did continue to go to the pool and play, but I remember that my dad was in a, rightfully, bad mood for the rest of the afternoon, and I couldn't get him to play in the pool with me. He usually was a big reader, but he just sat in that chair peering around the parking lot, and looked miffed for the rest of the afternoon. Who knows what would have happened if my dad hadn't been walking out behind me or looking out the window. I was honestly about 10 seconds away from being thrown into that car and taken to God knows where. I am a female, and when I was 14 years old, every summer I would ride my bike 4 miles to go to my favorite swimming pool. I would ride to my parents' office and put my bike in the back of my dad's truck. Then I would walk 6 blocks to get to the gate and give them my summer pass. I spent all day there until my parents got off work and walked back. One day, it was just like every other day. I rode my bike to my parents' office and walked there. But after a few hours, I developed a crush on a lifeguard who was super hot. We talked, and I was in the lazy river. But as we were talking about butterfly stroke, he said he could beat me. So I started to swim off, and he jumped in and began to swim after me. He caught up to me and grabbed me, but instead of grabbing my waist, he grabbed my breast and freaked me out. A 16-year-old male had just chased me down and grabbed my breast. I was freaking out, but I didn't show it. And suddenly a storm appeared out of nowhere, and we all got out and started to leave. But the wind kept me from standing up or walking forward. He was suddenly behind me and grabbed me and said he could give me a ride, and started to pull me to his car. About halfway there, I was struggling to get away, and his grip was just getting tighter, whereas my hand was going numb. I just sat there. As we got to his car, I saw my mum speeding through the parking lot and yelling at me to get in. He released my wrist, and I jumped into her car. As we were driving away, my mum asked who he was, and I didn't want to tell her. So I just said that a friend was going to drop me off at the office. I never saw him again at the park, and I don't know what would have happened if my mum hadn't have shown up. He'd already grabbed my breast and was dragging me to his car. I never went back because of that day, and I still haven't told anyone, and don't know if I even could. When I was 18, I went to a college in a fairly large city. For all of those of you who are in America, in England, a college is before university, not university. I had to get an hour-long bus into the city, and my lesson plan left huge gaps during the day, sometimes 4 hours at a time. I had a lot of time to kill, so I started taking up swimming at a local leisure centre. The pool was pretty busy, but everyone kept to themselves. This day I needed a piss, so I headed to the bathroom to use the urinal. While I was pissing, this dude slides up to the urinal next to me. This is already pretty weird, as most guys don't use the neighbouring one to someone else if others are free. Most guys know this. Some people are a bit clueless though, so I try to not think about it. Then, however, he starts clearly looking down at my junk. I finish quickly and leave the bathroom without washing my hands as I'm thoroughly creeped out. I carry on swimming, unbothered, and then get changed. As I'm leaving the swimming pool, I see the guy waiting for me, leering on the outside wall. He's probably about 40 years old and 5'10", old and quite slobby and blokey looking. He doesn't look like the type of guy who goes swimming to get fit, and I'm 6'2" and fairly confident in myself. As I make my way back to college, he starts following me. This goes on for about a mile, so I decide to test him and start crossing busy roads at strange places. Of course, he stays on my trail. At this point I'm getting quite freaked out, and I decide to forget about walking the last mile back and take the busy shuttle bus to the local uni that is very close to the college. Again, of course, he follows me and gets on. Luckily there aren't that many seats free, and he can't sit next to me. I ride for about 5 minutes, ring the bell, and hop off and get out of there. He was still behind me. But after walking into a building that he couldn't get access to, i.e. my college, he has to stop. Looking through the window, I can still see him leering at me. I don't know what his deal is. Did he think he could take me on? Did he want to hurt me? Or did he have other things in mind? I hope I don't have to find out. I was guarding at my local pool by myself, with over 100 people in the pool. A little into my shift, a few patrons came up and complained about the chlorine. Not being able to get sown from their chair for a fairly normal complaint, I radioed the front desk and asked them to send someone over when they could, so that I could walk them through the chemical testing. They were really busy. It was just after New Year, and they said it would be about half an hour. Half a cookie later, no one, but I didn't push it. In the half hour after that, I had 3 more groups of people, 2 of which consisted of adults, and the other a few of the swimmers on the pool's team. They were all complaining of the same thing. One of the swimmers had a mild burn on her arm from the pool. I radioed the front desk again and said I needed a staff member now. They sent over one. I had to walk them through the process 4 times to be completely sure, since I couldn't watch them do the chemicals. In that time, 3 more swimmers came up to me with mild burns. All 4 tests resulted in a chlorine level of 12.3 ppm, which is insanely high, like shut the pool down immediately high. To put it into perspective, we keep the hot tub, the most chlorinated water, at about 5, and we urge people to not stay in there for more than half an hour tops. I immediately called my boss, who was on call for the evening. He wasn't off call for another 2 hours, and he didn't pick up. I had the front desk call him for about an hour and a half, and when he finally picked up, they'd been calling him for over 45 minutes straight at that point. He told me that I couldn't close the pool, and since he didn't want to come back and fix it, he told me to just leave it, and joked to tell them to shower after they were done. Ignoring him completely, I closed the pool straight away. I threw in the chlorine nullifier and clocked out. He called me at 5 in the morning the next day, a Monday, and he was screaming at me and wanted to know why I closed the pool. I told him, because I quit. The maximum patrons per guard is 25 per our pool's policy and 50 per the state. I was at over 100 by myself, and the chlorine was literally at poisonous levels, and you wouldn't let me close it. So I solved the problem by quitting. Have fun finding a guard to replace my 60 hours a week, dick. For reference, I'm a 21-year-old male, 6'1" blonde and 175 pounds, and straight. Just to give you a mental image of the upcoming story. I have a membership to a gym and swimming pool. It's near where I live and work, and I normally go to the pools for 45 minutes and do some laps, after I finish at my day job. The setup of the facility is as follows. Walking into the main door to the lobby, there is a wall made entirely of glass, which looks onto the indoor swimming pool, for parents to watch children, I'm sure. There is also an emergency exit door from pool to lobby in this wall. The changing rooms are on the 2nd floor, up some stairs and down a hallway, like all changing rooms, and you walk through the shower area to the pool. Once you're through the shower area, you enter a hall that leads down a set of stairs to the pool. Anyway, yesterday I entered the changing room after work to put on my bathing suit and go for a swim. I swam competitively for many years, so I normally wear a jammer, which is essentially a pair of compression shorts. I'm in my suit, heading for the changing room to the showers, when I see a man glaring at me. He's dressed fully, in boots and an army jacket, and looks to be about 45. He's scruffy, balding, and he's shaking a metallic water bottle, so I assume there's some sort of protein shake in there. I pass him and head into the shower, and he stares at me the entire time I'm walking by, turning his head as he follows me. I shake it off, and turn on the shower to get wet before I enter the pool. Always obey the signs. I'm about to turn the shower off when the man comes into the shower room still fully dressed and whirls his head around like he's looking for someone. I figure perhaps he's waiting for someone he knows, but as I leave the room I glance back. Now, since I'm heading back down to the pool, I think that the ordeal is over. He was fully dressed and didn't look like he had any intention of going for a swim, right? I started swimming, forgetting about the weird encounter, and about 10 minutes later, I see someone familiar walking down the stairs, still fully dressed. I resolve to ignore him completely and keep swimming. He goes to the far end, near the glass wall which is opposite to where the lifeguards stand. I'm watching during breaths, and he's just standing there staring at me. At this point, I know he's only looking at me. I'm about to get out and talk to the lifeguard. However, at that moment, the lifeguard walks across the deck and begins talking to the man. I couldn't hear what he said, but he left through the emergency exit door on the glass wall. Except, instead of just leaving, he sat in the lobby and watched from there. I changed lanes so that I would no longer be in his line of sight. And about 10 minutes later when I looked, he's gone. That should be the end of this story, right? Wrong. 5 minutes after that, who do I see descending the stairs into the pool with a bathing suit on? You guessed it. At this point I decide I'd had enough, so I jump out of the pool to leave. When I get out, he's standing directly in front of the lane I was swimming in. You're a great swimmer. Yeah, you must practice a lot. Could you teach me? Sorry, I'm leaving. You have a nice body for a swimmer. Oof. At this point, I walked to get my towel and headed up the stairs. The man then shouted, "Oh, you're finished?" from the pool deck. I ignored him and headed to the changing room to get dressed. About halfway though, who do I see but the same man coming back into the changing room? I was more than a little worried at this point, so I tried to maneuver around the lockers to dodge him. However, he saw me and headed towards me. "Can I talk to you?" "What do you want, sorry?" "I'd like your phone number." Now I figured it was going to be something like this. Normally if a guy asks me for my number, and it's happened, I tell him that I'm not gay and that everything's cool. However, in most instances, the guy hasn't followed me around at a swimming pool for 40 minutes prior to asking. "No," I reply, and I walk back to my stuff and lose sight of the man. About 5 minutes later, I catch him leaving out of the corner of my eye. Once I was ready to leave, I walked to the staircase and surveyed to make sure he wasn't still around. Sure enough, he was, sitting and waiting on a bench in the lobby. I called my friend so that I could look busy and darted out the building, not making eye contact. I spent the half-hour walk paranoid perpetually, thinking that I was being followed. And because of that, I didn't go back to the pool for a while. Now normally something like this wouldn't bother me much, but this really creeped me out. I wanted to call the pool and inform them. I'd hate to think he goes there to prey on younger guys. The optimist in me says it's a one-time thing, but who's to know for sure? I was a lifeguard for 5 years, at a large indoor centre with multiple pools. Many serious rescues over the years, but often one comes to mind, despite not technically being a rescue. We had 2 large slides at the centre, both of which were enclosed tube flumes, most of the way down. A lifeguard, me in this case, stands at the top of the steps directing people down each slide, when it is safe for them to do so. I had only been working there for a few weeks as I was 16, when a very large couple reached the top. The woman was merely obese, but the man... I really don't like to speak ill of people, but this man was fat in ways that I still don't understand. He actively struggled to walk, and to this day I believe he may have had his own gravitational pull. So I waved the walking planet down the flume, not thinking any further of it, except that he failed to emerge at the other end. Minutes passed, and it slowly dawned on me what had transpired. I called into the opening of the slide, and sure enough, the man responds that he's lodged halfway and is unable to free himself. I radio my duty manager to ask for advice, and see him literally keel over with laughter on the walkway across the pool hall, while I use every fibre of my being to retain a professional straight face in front of the man's increasingly agitated wife. This had never happened before, nor has it happened since, and there was no protocol for this situation. I can save you from anaphylactic shock, or restart your heart, but I was never trained for this. Once our manager calms down, we begin to formulate a plan for dealing with the obstruction. We consider turning up the power on the jets to try and force him out, or turning off the flow of water to manually enter the slide and push him to the bottom. Before we can act, though, physics intervenes. See, a significant amount of water had built up behind this rotund gentleman, and eventually the weight and pressure of it caused him to shift. And when I say shift, I mean get launched into the catchment area like a bullet from an A-10 Warthog. He caused a literal wall of water to explode onto the space surrounding the bottom of the slide, literally lifting a small child off his feet and carrying him several meters across the room. It was truly a sight to behold, and the behemoth stood, looked around at the chaos he had caused, turned to look up at me, and gave me a thumbs up, accompanied by the widest, cheesiest, shit-eating grin I have ever seen in my life.